Welcome in to 2-for-1 Drafts. Austin Gayle here with my guy, Mike Renner, ready to kick things off on the Tuesday. Recording this Tuesday. It's really a big day for the NFL. Seeing a ton of news right now with players opting out, specifically New England Patriots players. I think some are saying Patriots are tanking. Bill Belichick's the mastermind. But Marcus Cannon is a former cancer survivor, and Dante Hightower's mom is at risk with immune disease, and he also had a kid on July 16th. I think what's happening is Bill Belichick, I think, is telling his players, to put family first and put health concerns first, especially knowing kind of the ceiling that is on this season, even with Cam Newton, knowing, how talented the rest of the AFC is with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I don't know. I'm not diving into this whole conspiracy theory that Bill Belichick is telling his players to opt out. I think players are opting out for health and safety reasons.
Yeah, that's if you believe that he's telling them, you're a little too far down the rabbit hole, in my opinion. You're a little
100%.
Too big of a conspiracy theorist. These are just guys who, and I've had talks with people inside the league and heard some of the things being discussed on these coronavirus calls that the players union has had. And there are guys who are legitimately nervous. There are guys out there who have legitimate concerns about if they're going to be protected by the NFL. And I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. 6 guys in the Patriots, I think that's going to be almost the norm around the NFL once kind of the dust settles. It's not just going to be them that have guys opting out. There's going to be a lot of teams around the league that are going to be hampered by this and have guys who are going to be taking the year off. And some of the ones that are interesting to me, though, are the guys who maybe weren't going to make the roster anyways and are just saying, hey, I can get my 150 guaranteed right now. Guys like Brandon Bolden and whatnot who aren't necessarily key cogs opting out. I think that might almost be a business decision for some of these guys. Yeah,
I was thinking that too. Brandon Bolden, Eddie Vanderdoes, Caleb Brantley, ththese guys that potentially wouldn't even make the roster. But this $150,000 is quote unquote a stipend, but it's really a salary advance, one that has to be paid back to the NFL from your 2021 salary. So guys like Brantley, Vanderdoes, Bolden that were potentially on the roster bubble, paying back that $150K is going to be easier said than done if you don't make an NFL roster. That is going to be bad news bears for those guys.
And you're kind of signing your career off at that point. If you're a fringe guy and you take a year off, what are the chances you're getting back in? It just does not seems like a little bit of a long shot for me or for those guys, in my opinion, that they ended up making a roster if you take a whole season off. So we'll see. But like I said, I think there's going to be more of this trickling in the coming days.
A few more things I wanted to mention on the COVID situation, people opting out before we dive into the big board. Mike recently released his top 50 players for the 2021 NFL draft. We're going to break down that top 50, talk about some of the main notables on that list. But before we do so, 2 things I want to mention. One, it's only 21 players have tested positive in the recent return for COVID. However, those are all rookies. Veterans don't report to camp until today. You're not going to see for another 2 to 4 days reports back on COVID testing for veterans until probably Friday or Monday of next week, which I think you're going to see again, a higher number of positives, a higher percentage of the NFL continuing to impact. COVID continues to impact the NFL. The other thing I wanted to mention was Dante Hightower, the linebacker for the New England Patriots, and also veteran safety Patrick Chung are both opting out. And Marcus Cannon, another starter for them. 3 names that came to mind, young players that I know you've evaluated that could see their first playing time in the NFL come as starters early in their careers. It is Josh Uche, the Michigan edge defender linebacker hybrid. You also have Kyle Duggar coming from North Ryan, who didn't even start until high school. Didn't start until his senior year of high school. So he's got very raw as a player. And then also Yadni Kajust, who didn't play a single regular season snap in 2019. However, I think was a 3rd-round pick in that 2019 NFL draft and graded well at West Virginia for us. Those 3 players come to mind as potential replacements for all 3 of those guys. What's your overall take on this Patriots roster, knowing they could be leaning on some of these young guys?
Yeah, when Duggar was drafted, that kind of was the ideal fit for him, was just Patrick Chung, heir apparent. That one looked like the plan all along. So I think that is the seamless sort of transition. That's where he ends up on that roster. It probably gets starting time sooner rather than later for them. The one I'm curious about is Hightower. And you mentioned Josh Uche. I think they had plans for Anthony Jennings to be the Hightower sort of role in that defense. So I'm wondering if Jennings, having played a similar, almost the exact the same sort of role in Alabama's defense that Hightower did, if Jennings doesn't go move to off ball and replace Hightower as sort of that blitzing thumper in the middle there.
Man, I mean, the Patriots have lost so many starters from this. Deron Harmon, Kyle Van Noy, obviously Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, like Jamie Collins. I mean, they were obviously one of the better defenses in the NFL this past year, if not the best defense in the NFL, losing that many bodies. And I know Bill Belichick is this mastermind, and it doesn't matter the names on the jerseys. He always gets plus production from his guys. But you were already expecting regression from this defense if they returned every starter. Now you're seeing so many new faces along this defense. I'm interested to see how this Patriots team reacts. I know a lot of people are on board with them as a dark horse candidate to win the AFC East now ahead of the Buffalo Bills because they added Cam Newton. But are these losses too much for the Patriots to really do damage in the AFC?
I don't think so. Like, I do think you have what fueled that defense last year. And as good as, Van Noy played and Jamie Collins, what fueled the defense was Stephon Gilmore, Jason McCourty, and J.C. Jackson. That was it. Mm-hmm. That is, having three lockdown cornerbacks playing at that level is why they were as good as they were defensively. Now, they're going to take a step back, but you're taking a step back from what was, damn near an all-time defense. So I think if you can improve offensively at this point with Cam Newton and whatever they do offensively with him, I think you could see this team balance out more, but still be a very good team.
All right, let's shift gears to the 2021 NFL Draft and look at this top 50 list that is live on PFF.com. Go check out PFF's interactive 2021 NFL Draft Board. You can check that out at PFF.com/draft/draft board. And you can also look at the 2020 Draft Board, easily to toggle between the two. I encourage you to look at the full list on the website. But before I list off the top 10 guys, give me an overview of this class, the top end of this class. What are some trends or some things that you're seeing from a positional strength standpoint, positional weakness standpoint for the 2021 class?
So I think the quarterback class is special. Truly something we probably haven't seen in quite some time in terms of the talent of those top three guys. And they come in at 1, 2, and 6 on our board just because there are some other blue chip players at somewhat valuable positions that I just feel like are going to translate and are as close to sure things as you're going to get at the college level. And Penn Sewell, who's 3rd on our board at offensive tackle, Jamar Chase, wide receiver, 4th on our board, the LSU guy, and then Micah Parsons at linebacker, 5th on our board before Trey Lance comes off at number 6. But that's more just indicative of how I don't feel great about Trey Lance just yet with his level of competition, but he has all the talent in the world to be any other year could be like a number 1 overall pick. That's how I feel about all three of those quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. So some very blue chip talent at the top, very good quarterback class. And I'm just going to say it, wide receiver class, out of this world again. Truly going to be loaded, might even be better than last year. Offensive tackle class, I'm a big fan of in terms of the top end talent. 4 guys in the offensive tackle class that make our top 20 players already. And then the safety class. I think we've touched on this a good deal already. Love the safety class. A lot of those guys who are our top safeties also made Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. We talked about that last week. But this is just a very versatile, athletic safety class, the likes of which we really haven't seen in a while. And after not a single safety went in round 1 last year, I think you'd see 4 or even 5 go in round 1 next season.
I have 2 things there. One, I really do love this wide receiver class. I'm in love with Chris Olave. I love what he's done as a route runner. Like seeing him not be an elite athlete like some of the other guys in this class. Jalen Waddle has got speed for days. Rondale Moore is literally a freak of nature. Tutu Atwell landed on Bruce Feldman's freak list, but not a freak athlete. Still dominate in single coverage. I talked to Steve Palazzolo recently, who's working a lot on PFF stable versus unstable metrics for college to pro projections for NFL and NCAA teams. Chris Olave is up there in separation percentage and single coverage. This guy gets it done against in one-on-one situations, and you see that on his tape. The other thing I wanted to mention, in addition to the safety class being very good, and I really do like the top end of the safety class, you mentioned 4 guys that could be in the first round. I think the edge defender class is a lot of projection. Gregory Rousseau has to get so much better. Jason Owe has to get so much better. Even Carlos Basham Jr., I think, still needs to get a lot better. These guys, Carlos Basham Jr. was 4th on the freaks list. Kwity Paye, I think, was 1st. You have a lot of very freaky edge defenders in this upcoming class, but I think of all of them, maybe Basham has the most polish, a guy that's gotten it done the most along the edge. But still, this edge defender group, I think, largely projection. I'm excited to see in 2020, barring that there is a season, which of those guys really steps up to be edge one? Because I think the production is what's missing for the group.
I like that call out because you touched on it. These guys are athletic. This is an athletic edge class. In Quiddy Pie, who was number one, Carlos Basham, even Xavier Thomas is a pretty darn good athlete.
I didn't mention his name.
Right.
He's
and Gregory Rousseau, like those guys are all just, they got it. They got all the physical aspect down pat. Like you don't need much more. There's not much more you could ask for. They can be elite producers off the edge in the NFL with the physical tool sets they all have. Now, why haven't we seen elite production from them yet? Well, one of the reasons is a lot of them are super young. A lot of these guys are rising juniors or rising redshirt sophomores. Like they are not, this isn't a veteran group. I think only Quiddy Pay and Carlos Basham could have declared for the draft last year of the edge defenders in our top 50. I guess Chris Rumpf could have too. And he's kind of in his own group that we'll talk about a little later. But I do think that sort of the sky is the limit. Like we could be talking about this edge class 6 months from now after the season and saying, damn, 5 guys might go in the top 20, 5 guys might go in the top 15. That's how much talent there is from a physical perspective.
100%. All right, let's get into it. We're going to break this down to a few segments here. We're going to break down the top 10 in full, list every name, dive into it, offer some insight on the top 10 players on this list. Then we're going to look at, on this list, who can improve their stock the most. Of course, some of those edge defenders will be on there, those guys that are largely projection right now. Then we're going to call it right now. There are going to be some guys in this class. There's guys like this every year. Curtis Weaver comes to mind from this past year's class. As guys that PFF will be higher on than the consensus because of the production, because of what they do on the football field, and not so much the traits and all those things. So we're going to highlight those guys as well. And the last segment will be last call, just highlighting some notables from the 50 list, some guys we want to bring up that could be names to watch in 2020. All right, starting with this top 10 here, I'm going to read it off, and then we kind of rip it up from there. Number 1. Obvious. Trevor Lawrence of Clemson. He's going to be first on a lot of people's boards entering this year. He's going to be first on a lot of people's boards when it's all said and done. Number 2, Justin Fields, the Ohio State quarterback. After that, Penn Sewell, the offensive tackle for Oregon, a guy that's graded so well in PFF systems, so insane what he does with his feet. We had Jeff Schwartz on earlier, or a few episodes back, and really waxed poetic, former Oregon Duck himself,
That's
about Penn Sewell.
He was
he was all in.
Stroking.
Yeah. Jamar Chase, wide receiver, LSU, comes in at number 4. Micah Parsons, linebacker, Penn State, might be the best linebacker prospect we've seen since Reuben Foster. Trey Lance, North Dakota State quarterback. Rondale Moore then comes in there at 7. Alex Leatherwood, the Alabama offensive tackle, at 8. Marvin Wilson, Florida State defensive interior, at number 9. And then Gregory Rousseau, the Miami edge defender, there at 10. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence at 1. Justin Fields at 2, and then you have Trey Lance down there at 6. What is the biggest difference? Let's start to kind of break it down this way. What is the biggest difference between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields? Why right now is Lawrence ahead of Fields, and how close are those two prospects?
I think there's a couple different things that between Lawrence and Fields that that I would like Lawrence better at. One is just sample size. 2 years of dominating at the college football level, as well as Lawrence has dominated, is better than 1. Like if a guy's done it for longer, you're just going to feel more comfortable about it. And the second thing is just the way, basically poise, as I guess the best way to put it. Trevor Lawrence already has that NFL level of dealing with blitzes, dealing with tight pockets, dealing with just like things where you're under pressure and have to make quick decisions with the football. That's Lawrence like to a T. The thing that a lot of guys struggle with when projecting from college to the NFL, because you have so much more time in college, these massive pockets. We've seen it with Baker Mayfield, being able to deal with pressure and how much that can hamper you as a young quarterback. I have 0 question marks about Lawrence in that regard. Absolutely none. He could step on an NFL field tomorrow. I mean, he could step on against the Alabama defense in the national championship game and carve him up as a true freshman. Like he has that ability to just deal with adversity, and he's shown it again and again in his career at Clemson. So I'm not worried about him in that regard. Fields, I do not feel that same level of comfort. And that's just sort of, I think I've said this before on the podcast. If you were to tell me Fields is better than Lawrence in 3 years in the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised. If you were to tell me Trey Lance is better than both of them in 3 years in the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised. That's the level of talent we're working with these 3 guys. but it's about how safe you feel then, because all three of these guys are so incredibly talented with what they can do from arm strength perspective and accuracy perspective, that you want the guy who you feel most comfortable about doing the other like little things it takes to be an NFL quarterback. And to me, that's Trevor Lawrence at this point. Not quite Justin Fields. I don't want to say he's bad at those by any means. But Trevor Lawrence is just like as good as I've seen at the college level at that.
Something that I think needs to come up earlier in both of those evaluations is their athletic ability. Both Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields are very, very good athletes. And as we've seen, with the quarterback position in the NFL, like you need to be able to move. You need to, like Patrick Mahomes can move. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen is not one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but has success because he does have that mobility. I think these statues are no longer viable in the NFL. Guys that you need, in addition to having good pocket presence, you need to be able to move with your feet and make plays with your feet. And I think you see that with Trevor Lawrence. Like Trevor Lawrence could tear it up in a system that leans on his running game. I think that's almost what they have to do. Justin Herbert, in a similar way, was a guy that had really good underrated feet, underrated athletic ability that when shown in games could really do well. I think that's something that really stands out for me with Lawrence and Fields. Yeah,
Lawrence probably going to run 4.6, Fields maybe 4.55 in that range.
Absurd.
Lance probably about the same, 4.5 something. These guys are all that's the crazy thing. That's why I say like this quarterback class is different, because there's not really a lot of negatives. Like there's not really a lot of physical things that you would like a quarterback to do that they don't do already. And they're all very young. I think Fields is actually the oldest of the bunch, and he just turned 21. They're all 20 or 21, all redshirt sophomores or true juniors. It's pretty ridiculous.
Absolutely. I didn't even mention it at the top of the podcast, but at the back end here, we're going to interview Seth Galina, PFF's own Seth Galina. We talk a lot about this quarterback class. We also bring up the Montreal dating scene, one of which that Seth Galina is notably struggling in. Here's the take. We interviewed him already. We're going to play the interview at the end of the pod, but I'll bring this up to tease it a bit. I asked him for an elevator pitch on Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. Dude, it's like 30 minutes of conversation. It's like, dude, that's how you're losing these first dates. Yeah. Get in, get out, offer some valuable insight, man. You're just like running on here. I don't know. I don't want to give him dating advice on the pod now, but there's a little tip, man. You got to speak quicker, speak with some conviction. Anyway, going back to this list, I want to jump to Penny Sewell. There are no other tackles. There are two tackles in the top 10. It's Penny Sewell there at 3, and then Alex Leatherwood at 8. We talked about Penny Sewell a lot. Is he really, the best offensive tackle prospect we've seen in 2 or 3 years? Just put on a scale for me just how good this guy is.
I mean, how good he is that at 19 years old last year, he would have unquestionably been the top tackle drafted in last year's class, like with Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Kai Becton, all those guys, Tristan Wirfs, freak athletes. Penny Sewell, it would not have even been a conversation. Was he the top tackle off the board? That's how good he is. And he was 19 years old. I think he turns 20 in a few months. Like he's going to be 20 when he's drafted, 20 when he's starting his first game as a rookie in the NFL. And I would bet you could step out on an NFL field tomorrow and pass protect at a high level, be an above average offensive tackle. That's the type of talent we're talking about at 19 years old. So it's just rare. Like we wax about the learning curve at offensive tackle, that seeing a guy be average as a freshman in college is incredible. He was not only average as a freshman, he was one of the best tackles in college football as a true freshman back in 2018. So that's the level of prospect we're talking about. Anything you want, he brings to the table. So that's why he's number 3 on this list, and why he's above a QB, because we just feel like no matter – yes, you get a elite level quarterback, but we know you're getting a lead offense tackle in Penny Sewell.
Mm-hmm. Man, and with Penny Sewell, I'm going to bring up Alex Leatherwood as well, again, at 8 on PFF's top 50 rankings. The thing that I find myself looking for at offensive tackle so much after watching this past year's class is feet. Who are the athletes in this class? And Sewell, again, incredible talent, incredible feet. Moving out on screens in Oregon's offense is just so impressive. What he does when he's moving to the second level never looks out of balance. And Leatherwood, another guy with smooth moving feet, very clean pass sets, in my opinion. I think his hands need work, but like when you have those movement skills to stick with speed at the linebacker position, at edge defender, whoever you're blocking, that translates to the NFL. And that's what you see with Penny Sewell and Alex Leatherwood. Am I wrong to be looking so much at movement skills for offensive tackle?
Well, it's because getting in the right position, getting the right relationship between you and the guy you're trying to block is 90% of blocking. Like 90% might be an exaggeration. I kind of just pulled that out of my ass right there. But it is by far and away the most important aspect of it. You can, and then the other things can somewhat be coached up in terms of how to use your hands better, how to get, getting stronger. You can get stronger usually if you're a 300-pound man who's athletic. You can't teach a guy to move. You can't teach a guy to have feet. That's just not something that just improves overnight, especially when you're that big of a dude that is, fits the size profile to play offensive tackle. So guys like Sewell and Leatherwood, when you see it, you feel pretty good about their chances of success in the NFL.
All righty. Let's jump to this receiver group here. I want to talk specifically Ja'Marr Chase. He comes in at number 4 ahead of Micah Parsons and Trey Lance. And then you also have Rondale Moore there at 7. Ja'Marr Chase, I remember we talked about him a little bit in 2020. We've talked about him a lot. The first thing that pops out for me is the speed. I think he's a very, very fast receiver. The verticals he ran at LSU were really impressive. I always thought Ja'Marr Chase was a better receiving prospect than even Justin Jefferson, who racked up production in that LSU offense. But if you watch it closely, you watch him against Trayvon Diggs and some of these other cornerbacks that are more physical, the dude is a bully, an absolute bully at the line of scrimmage. When you have that combination, people are already making Julio Jones, Megatron, just ridiculous comps to this guy. But I mean, this is, I think, what people think maybe Denzel Mims could be, like a bigger receiver that's physical and that's very lightning fast on vertical routes. Ja'Marr Chase, again, best receiver in this class. That's obvious. How much better can it get? How much better does it get with Ja'Marr Chase?
I don't know. Like that, he won't produce more this year. Yeah. But I've racked my brain trying to come up with comps for Ja'Marr Chase, and there's really not a lot of great comps for him in terms of the skill set he brings to the table at only 6 foot, but 210, like an odd body type. Somewhat, there's not a lot of guys that in the history, past decade or so is when you usually make comps that I can think of that play the way he does at that size, where it's just he could beat you with power, he can beat you with speed, he can beat you with physicality, line of scrimmage, he can beat you with his hands, he can beat you with just the fact that he has better ball skills and he was going to track the ball better in the air. He's not, your prototypical 6'3", 220 bigger wide receiver, but he did not at any point get out physical last year. So like I said, I'm racking my brain. I have racked my brain for forever trying to think of someone that has a similar game to him, but he is a rare breed. Maybe that's all we got to leave it at this point.
I mean, the Trayvon Diggs game really stands out to me. I mean, you go against a guy that tries to play physical with everyone he goes against, and dude just dominated him, absolutely dominated him left and right. Like Trayvon Diggs simply couldn't stick with Ja'Marr Chase in that game. It was a very impressive matchup for that one.
And also the A.J. Terrell game. I mean,
yes,
the OPI one, that was definitely an OPI that didn't get called. But the other times he beat him deep, just being able to stack cornerbacks down the field consistently the way he did is just rare to see a guy like that. That's why he's 4th on our board here.
I mean, another guy, though, that in the same breath you could mention is very rare is Rondale Moore, the Purdue wide receiver that, didn't play a ton this past year due to injury, but you look at his true freshman season, he's done things that other receivers wish they could do across their career, across 4 years of playing in the NCAA. What this guy can do after the catch, special even before the catch, creates separation very well. Some drop concerns on his game, but they're more focused drops rather than contested catch situations and those things. But I think Rondale Moore overall, another rare piece of the puzzle of this really, really good 2021 receiver class.
Yeah, the more I watched him, the more I think he can almost be like a Steve Smith at the NFL
Let's
level.
Go. Those are the comps that keep coming, though.
Where you don't have to throw him. Everyone sees 5'9", 175, and it's like slot receiver.
Yep.
I don't think he has to be a slot receiver. I think that's selling his skill set short, and that's why he's 7th on this list, is because I don't think he's just your give it to him on a jet sweep guy, give it to him on the wide receiver screen guy. That's all he's bringing to the table, and maybe he's like a vertical slot weapon. No, I think he can actually win on the outside a little more consistently, and that's giving him credit for. So, and yes, he will win down the field as well on the outside. He just has that explosiveness and juice to him that you can't coach. So I need to see him play more football, though. I'm sad that we didn't get to see him last year, but even in the games we did see in Nevada, Vanderbilt, he was winning down the field from the outside. And that's where I think he can continue. I think he continued to do that at the NFL level.
All right, last two names in the top 10 before we dive into some of the other segments here. It's Marvin Wilson, the defensive interior at Florida State, and then also Gregory Rousseau at Miami, Florida. I think Wilson, a bit more polished, or maybe even a lot more polished than Rousseau. This guy's got a ton of technique. He's not – I don't think he's overly explosive, but I do think he wins with his first step a lot. Like, he can win with his first step as an interior defensive lineman. He wins with his hands early in the snap. You see that in single games this past year. He's one of the highest graded interior defensive linemen in college football this past year. Decided to come back to school. I think you could bank on him being a top 5, top 10 graded player at his position in 2020. That, if a season does happen, of course. I really do like Marvin Wilson's game. However, if I had to highlight a guy that I don't think will be a riser, I think it is Marvin Wilson. I think at 9 is probably his ceiling. I do not see Marvin Wilson being better than a top 10 prospect in 2021. I think what could damage his stock is if you don't see it get better, because you need to continue to see it get better with Marvin Wilson. Even as good as he was this past year, you need to see more moves come into his game. You need to see him even find ways to be more explosive and win more pass rush reps.
Yeah, I think just more consistently game-to-game dominance. If you see that from him, and he's not going to test, like a Fletcher Cox, like an Aaron Donald. That's not who he is. But if you don't have that elite explosiveness, you can win with elite power, and I do think he has elite power. Like, I think he has an elite ability to, just torque with his upper body grown men along the offensive line, and that's what we've seen from him over the course of his career at Florida State, and the fact that he was doing it already as a junior, younger guy than Derek Brown did when he was a senior, then Javon Kinlaw did last year when they were both seniors. He was doing the similar things as a junior. You just feel better about that. And so if he does take it to the next level in terms of just is winning on a play after play basis, I think he could be a top 10 pick in 2021 still.
All right. Give me the skinny on Gregory Rousseau. I look at him and I see, not the rarest of that, not as rare as what Jadeveon Clowney was, but a Jadeveon Clowney type of player in that, playing him all over the line of scrimmage. He played a ton of nose tackle this past year, interior defensive line, edge defender. They stunted him a ton, and you saw him win with pure athletic ability. You didn't see him win a ton with his hands or win a ton with his moves. I think he's still a very raw player, needs to improve from a polish standpoint. If he's going to line up at edge defender, 40 snaps a game and beat the man in front of him without stunts and without, any of the flair there. But with Rousseau, there's still, playing him in a Jadeveon Clowney role is a win. I mean, moving him around the line of scrimmage, finding mismatches for him to take advantage of is a win in today's NFL, especially if you go into a creative defense like a Bill Belichick, what Brian Flores is doing, Matt Patricia, that Belichick tree that likes to blitz off-ball linebackers. That's where I see Rousseau right now, which, again, in certain defenses you can excel with. But if he's going to be that true top 10 pick, that true best edge defender in this class, you got to beat the tackle in front of you in true pass set situations every day of the week.
And so there's a reason why scouts rely on traits the way Rousseau has in terms of long arms, explosiveness, that sort of thing, even height. It makes your job easier as a defensive lineman. Having these freaky tools that Rousseau has, it makes your life easier when you're going up against opposing offensive linemen. And so to see him, one, have those tools, two, put him into action somewhat, the flashes were there where he just, was unblockable in certain games last year and dominated. The flashes were there. And for him to be admittedly raw, like him having a legitimate excuse being he didn't play, he played safety, wide receiver coming out of high school, only switched to defense his freshman year to play defensive line. Legitimate excuses why he doesn't have a lot of pass rushing moves, but then the first time he puts it on tape, it's already you already see the high level, you already see it being good. I just think we're going to see a big leap from him this year. If we don't, obviously that's concerning, and he will not stay in the top 10 on our draft board. But I just think there's a lot of sort of arrows pointing up with him where I'd get pretty excited about what we're going to see from him in 2020.
All right, that's going to do it for the top 10 list on PFF's top 50. Remember, I encourage you for the 2021 NFL Draft, go to PFF.com, check out the big board for the full list of 50 players. Now we're going to move on to some segments here to talk about this list. Going to talk first on who can improve their stock the most, a list of guys that can. But before we do so, Mike, kind of breaking as we're recording this now on Tuesday around 12:30, Michael Pierce, the new Minnesota Vikings defensive tackle, is opting out for the 2020 season. That's another. I mean, him and Dante Hightower are in a similar boat in terms of high-profile names that will not be playing in 2020. I think this list, like you said, is going to continue to grow. You're going to see, I don't think 6 players per team is going to be a number that scares anyone. I think you're going to see it in that 6 to 10 range for the NFL.
This one's interesting too because Hightower, Chung, they're what, third contract guys. They've been around, they've made their money to a degree. They don't necessarily need this. This was Michael Pierce's. He just signed his first free agent contract. He just made his money, and now he's not going to see that first year salary. Which I'm not sure. Maybe he had a big signing bonus and like a small first year salary, and so he doesn't really give too much of a shit. But we'll see. It's just interesting to see that the guy in his very first year. In a new contract, it's a little different than the other two.
All right, let's get into this list of guys that can improve their stock the most, starting with Bruce Feldman's number 1 player on the Freaks list, Michigan edge defender Kwity Paye. First thing I'll mention about him is that you do see that explosiveness. You do see this rare athlete that can turn the corner when he does turn it on at Michigan. The second thing you notice is dude's raw as hell. I mean, he leans on that inside move all day long, kind of bullies the inside shoulder of offensive tackles. Also, Michigan stunts, I think, at the highest percentage of any college football team, or at least any Power 5 team. They stunt a ton and open things up for other players. There's a lot of pass rush snaps where Kwity Paye is not, his primary goal is not to get after the quarterback, rather open things up for other players too. So looking at pass rush win rates, thinking about how stunts affect those things is interesting. But with Kwity Paye, all the tools in the world, that's evident in his film. But I do think he's still, I love that on the PFF 50, you have Aiden Hutchinson, the Michigan edge defender, ahead of Kwity Paye, because I think it's for this reason. And it's for this reason. Kwity Paye needs to get a fuckload better. Like, that guy needs to get so much better if he's going to be a first-round pick. He also needs to show at the combine that he can actually clock a 6.3 3-cone, because if that freaking happens, I don't even know if this guy's a real human being.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, he's not sniffing Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. I'm not sure he's –
not a chance.
He ain't winning any athletic awards anytime soon, but he's just a much better football player right now. And give me the guy who at a technical position to some degree. Give me the guy who's better technically. And so he's Aiden Hutchinson's at 37, Kwity Paye at 39. But like you mentioned, Kwity Paye can get a lot higher in this list. He's just more of a battering ram right now than he is.
That's a perfect way
pass
to
rusher. And they use him as a battering ram because they know that that's like what he is at his best doing. Mm-hmm. So if he gets to that level, like that's why I said, if that's why he's has the most, you can improve his stock the most. He can get to the top 5 on this list. That's the sort of physical tools we're talking about. But right now, he's not close.
All right, moving forward down this list here, Trey Smith. He's another guy, in addition to Penny Sewell, that Jeff Schwartz was in love with his film at Tennessee. I believe he has one of the highest percentage of big-time blocks, those highly graded blocks in the run game. You see that on his – this guy's explosive, another toolsy prospect that just hasn't been able to progress or develop at the rate that you'd like them to see due to some health concerns, I think, with his lungs, or blood clots in his lungs have kept him really from progressing from this, like, uber 5-star freak to like a perennially dominant player in the NCAA. But like, you think about this kid's ceiling, and if he turns in a very strong 2020 campaign, I would not be surprised if he's a first rounder, not in the slightest.
Yeah, that's the thing. We talk about legitimate excuses for why a guy hasn't developed. He has legitimate ass excuses for why he hasn't really gone from this. And like I even touched on earlier, he was a good offensive lineman as a true freshman. That's rare to see. Being above average as a true freshman just does not happen. And he was in our grading system, but then, missed off seasons with those blood clots in his lungs, careers in jeopardy. If he comes back this year, puts together a full season of the play he's capable of, and that we saw to a degree down the stretch last year at Tennessee, we're talking about a first-round guard. And he has that physical ability to be a Pro Bowl guard in the NFL. Just you can't go through him even at this point. So I'm a fan of his game, but again, it's a consistency-based position. It's not a highlight reel based position like we've been talking about with Greg Rousseau on the defensive line. you need to be consistent. So far, he hasn't been that right now.
All right, some other edge defenders to mention here, and we talked about this a little bit at the top here, but it's Xavier Thomas of Clemson and Jason Oweh of Penn State, two guys that you see the tools, you see the athletic ability, especially pre-snap. I think Jason Oweh, his get-off is very, very good, way better than Yetur Gross-Matos. I feel like I find myself constantly comparing the two, but he's just a better athlete. He gets off the ball so much quicker, and Xavier Thomas is in a similar boat as him. Both of these guys, again, how they improve their stock is the production. If you see consistency from a pass rush production standpoint in 2020, you can bank on the fact that you're going to see similar consistency in the NFL. PFF pass rushing grades at the collegiate level are one of the more predictive stats at the college level, that and PFF passing grade correlating to the NFL. So you want to see that pass rushing grade at the college level, especially in the Power 5.
So Oweh, we just need to see him as a starter. Only 330 snaps last year. He's probably going to double that this year if they do play 12 games in the Big 10, excuse me. I just need to see what he does as a starter. And there's no real big worrisome sort of things on his tape that I don't think he can get there. We just need to see it more from him. And Xavier Thomas, the role he played last year, we've talked about this a lot with him, just was not conducive to his skill set. He was not actually even given the opportunity to rush the passer a lot of the times with that 3-1-7 defense where he's just contain rushing on the outside. So hopefully he's put in a better situation to actually attack this year like he was as true freshman. So both those guys, I think you can improve their draft stock just by literally playing more in a role that suits them. They have the skill set. We need to see it. It's the sort of our MO and why we're lower on them right now.
Another name you have on this list is Jamie Newman, the Georgia cornerback, former Wake Forest transfer. He's 50th on the PFF top 50 entering the 2021 NFL draft. I know there are a lot of people in the building on board with Jamie Newman as a legitimate prospect. PFF Tresh or PFF Anthony is a big fan of Jamie Newman's game. I know Seth is a fan as well. What's your opinion of Jamie Newman? How does he get better this year?
So he just gets, again, a good opportunity, a showcase opportunity in terms of you go from a Wake Forest offense that pretty much in every sense of the word can be described as collegey. They do those super slow RPOs, vertical, just straight go routes on the outside, not actually a lot of things that asking kind of what we talk about with Seth a little later on in the program in terms of, are you asked to do stuff you'll be asked to do in the NFL? Or are you asked to do stuff that is very simplistic at the college level? Wake Forest, what he was asked to do there was simplistic. He's going to now Georgia, where Todd Monken's their offensive coordinator, was literally just an offensive coordinator in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns, before that Tampa Bay. So he's going to get an opportunity to showcase a lot better in that offense. I believe so. I think he's going to win the starting job there. I'm not too worried about that. But I think he's just going to get that opportunity. And he could also crash his stock too. Like he could also go there, crash and burn, not even win the starting job and fall completely out of our top 50.
That would be a disaster
right now. But he's going to get that sort of showcase opportunity, and you're going to feel better about, as a draft analyst, I'm going to feel better about his projection when I do see him in an offense like that.
In a similar boat, Shaun Wade's in the same boat. I mean, he's going to go from slot corner to outside corner now that Jeffrey Okudah is playing with the Detroit Lions. And this past year, very productive in the slot. I really liked his tape playing slot corner for the Buckeyes this past year. But he's going to move to outside corner, see if he can stick with outside guys in a ton of single coverage looks. It's put up or die, really. Like if he doesn't play well at outside corner, you're going to see his stock drop.
Die, but I mean,
not die. That was a little aggressive. Okay, I'm sorry.
Not the word choice I would have gone.
I did not like that word choice a ton. I'm going to reel it back in. Shaun Wade has to perform at outside corner if he's going to be considered a top pick.
So again, I don't think he could actually tank his stock, because he's almost had like a proven, almost like Micah Fitzpatrick, where it's like, hey, he still can be a damn good slot, and you're going to be. So he's not going to fall off boards like entirely, but he has an opportunity to establish himself as cornerback one if he plays lights out football on the outside. So that is all you can really ask for. And again, you'll feel better about drafting a guy. If you would have gone out last year, you would have been like, do we try out? Do we take a flyer on him, enter round one, and see if we can transition him to the outside cornerback? I think a lot of teams still would have been wary about that. So I do agree with his decision to come back to school, and think he can push his way towards the top 10 with a big year.
Do you really think that in him playing, he's going to thrive at outside corner? I don't know if I saw the level of twitchiness, the match and mirror ability to play outside corner. I don't know. Like it's a lot of it's a projection.
When he was in press man, it did not look it didn't look anything like Jeffrey Okudah, but that's a high bar to clear. So
looks more like Arnett, in my opinion. I don't know. We'll see. Diving into this next name here, a couple more guys to mention in this segment: Kyle Pitts and Chaz Surratt, two names that could improve their stock. Chaz Surratt just needs, if he can just contain himself a little bit. He's a bowling ball right now. He's reckless as hell and very raw. Obviously a former quarterback there at UNC playing off-ball linebacker now. But the tools, I do like the tools. Seth, not a huge fan of Chaz Surratt. He did not grade well this past year. What's the missed tackle stat? This guy missed a shitload of tackles.
He missed over a quarter of his tackles. He had 27 missed tackles this past season.
It's over a quarter of his tackles.
That's the thing. He just played quarterback. Is a legitimate excuse for those missed tackles. If he can clean those up next year, if that can really improve, he could make his way into the first round conversation. And then with Pitts at tight end, like gain 15 pounds, you can make your way into the first. You can push your way up the draft board. Like just prove that you can put on some muscle. Basically, is all Pitts really needs to do because that guy's a freak.
Dude, I love Kyle Pitts. Some people are highlighting Freiermuth as maybe the tight end one in the 2021 draft. Where are you between those two?
This is the conversation of what do you want in your offense? Do you want a guy who can inline block? Is that necessary for you at tight end? Mm-hmm. By all means, go draft Freiermuth. If you're asking purely what they can do as receivers, I don't think it's close. Like Pitts is different than any tight end I've seen at the college level in the past handful of years. That dude can just move.
He can actually separate. Like he can actually, you can play him out wide. I think it goes back to like Travis Kelce, and I think you've made that comparison too. This past year, people don't realize Travis Kelce ranked inside the top 3 in yards per run at outside receiver. When he played, and he lined up there over 100 routes at outside receiver, and still blew people out of the water playing outside receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs this past year. That's the type of production you could see Kyle Pitts have if used in a versatile role. If Andy Reid, the puppet master there in KC with Mecole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Kelce, really using those guys effectively. Kyle Pitts in a good offense, man, look out.
And Pitts is 21st on our board, and I'm saying he could still raise his draft stock high because I think that's how talented he is as a receiver. He was the best receiver in a receiving corps that had 3 receivers drafted last year, and he led them in yards, Florida. So that's how talented I think he is. He can win from the outside like an outside wide receiver. So big fan of this game.
All righty. Moving forward, now let's move to the next segment here. Let's talk about guys that PFF will be higher on than the consensus due to
is higher on.
Is higher on. True.
We tank these guys. Like we could at some point be like, no, I don't want to. Like,
never mind. These guys are trash.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start it off with Brock Purdy.
We could Jared Pinkney these guys.
Yeah, we could definitely Jared Pinkney these guys. Let's start off with Brock Purdy, the Iowa State quarterback. Seth's a big fan. You'll hear that interview later in the podcast. I know you're a big fan. Tresh is all on board with Brock Purdy. It sounds like PFF's all in on the Iowa State signal caller.
And this is the type of guy we're going to be higher on, where the old school projectable NFL things, size, he's 6'1", 210, arm strength, are not elite by any means. Yeah. He doesn't have those. He doesn't have those of a top 5. Your prototypical first-round quarterback does not have arm strength or height like Purdy has for the last 20 years. Guys they've overlooked guys that look like Brock Purdy. The other things, though, that we care about, and that's, actually playing football at a high level, being accurate with football, making decisions on time, quick decisions, I think Purdy does those exceptionally well. And he's also, we've said this, he's a gamer. Like the guy does what it takes to win, is going to, dive for that first down instead of sliding at the markers. He has that gamer sixth sense that I want on my football team. So he's 15th on our list, and can even push his way higher if he has a big year this upcoming year. Yeah,
especially, PFF's board, I think more than others too, will always factor in positional value. Well, if you don't view Purdy or Jamie Newman as these top players, like they play the quarterback position, and if they have potential, high percentage chances of playing the quarterback position in the NFL at a high level, they're going to rank high on our board. That just makes the most sense. All right, some other names here are Darius Washington. We've talked about him a handful of times on the podcast, a guy that was on the Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. He's one of the 2 TCU safeties, the other one being Trayvon Moorick, that has graded super well in the Big 12 here at PFF. The biggest issue is that he's small as hell. People are going to make – I don't think people will make this comparison, but Carl Joseph comes to mind as the last, really small safety, but, there was a lot to like about his game. He had range. He was a hard hitter.
He was short but not small, though, right? He was 195.
Yeah, Carl Joseph was pretty pretty jacked. But with Ardarius Washington, he's a bit small, but the range is there. The instincts, you've made a comparison to Tyrann Mathieu. I really like what he's done playing deep. I think when he's playing deep and evaluating, or pattern recognition on the deep side of things is very good. I really like his game.
I just can't see him being bad in the NFL. I don't know how to, like, the way some of the plays he makes and the way he sees the game, it's just going to be difficult for me to see him going to the NFL and just sucking, and just being like, because he almost never has bad reads on his tape. There's just not a lot of times where he's like either, very slow to read something or screws something up like entirely. He's just very sound at the safety position. So he's our safety one right now, 17th on the board. Obviously not going to be everybody's cup of tea at that size, and that, everyone wants a long safety with, 33-inch arms. Never going to be that guy, but he can play football better than pretty much any safety in college football right now.
All right, Rondale Moore is also on this list. We've talked about him a ton. I think everyone there's going to be a lot of people high on Rondale Moore. I'll be honest. The
Seven's pretty high though. We're the top 10. I don't think a lot of people are going to be calling for him as top 10 pick, but I am.
Okay. Let it be known. All right. Other name, Chris Rumpf, the Duke edge defender that graded ridiculously well for PFF. You've said best moves in college football as a pass rusher. I think his dad is a linebackers coach or a defensive line coach in the NCAA. The problem is similar to Washington. He's small. He's a smaller player that needs to add some weight to his frame for the NFL to really see him as a top talent.
I think his dad actually moved on to NFL level, right?
Oh, here we go.
I'm not sure, somewhere, but his dad obviously was a coach or is a coach, and that's why he's probably the most sound sort of pass rusher in college football that I've seen in quite some time. And his moveset, like, he just has a ton of moves and he can deploy and win inside, outside. But he is 225 pounds, and that is far too small to feel good about projecting the NFL. So we'll be higher on him unless he doesn't gain like any weight at all and shows up at 225 in the combine. Then that's just too small. But I think if he gets in even like 235, I'll be on board with his projection. He's just too good, too different from any other guy I've seen at that size, that I think he could still win.
Two more names here, Aiden Hutchinson and Corey Durden. I really like Aiden Hutchinson. We were talking a little bit over the weekend, made some Brett Kiesel comparisons. I mean, he's stiff. I think he is your
old school 3-4 DE like that. He is that body type for sure.
I mean, he's stiff. I feel like his change of direction is rough. I don't love his bend, but like he is one of the better bull rushers in this pass rusher or in this edge defender class for sure. I mean, you see him walk back some very good offensive tackles on his tape dispatch. He had an opportunity to go back against Alabama's offensive tackles, Iowa, Tristan Wirfs. Like, he had some opportunities to really go against some top talent in the tackle position. And you saw good tape against every tackle. He didn't always beat the guy in front of him emphatically, but you saw good tape against every offensive line he faced. You said to me before, high floor player. I feel that way as well.
Yeah, and so we've already touched on why we're high on Hutchinson, and a lot of people probably won't be, is because of the athleticism. But Corey Durden, the FSU DT, is the interesting one because I feel like a lot of people overrate ugly reps along the defensive line. Like, losing to us along the defensive line isn't nearly as important as just being able to win and being able to win consistently. Like, if you have reps where you get taken off the ball like Durden does a lot on his tape, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He has some really bad reps and some pass rushes where he falls flat in his face and it looks like shit. But he also has the most pressures of any returning defensive tackle in the country. One of the best pass rushing grades as well. He just was uber productive on a high number of snaps this past season, and is 6'5", 315 pounds. He has the ideal body type for your do-it-all DT. So he comes in at 45th on our list. And honestly, he could even be on the guys who we talked about improve your draft stock the most. You just clean some of that up. This guy has the physical tools of a first rounder.
All right, last call. I'm going to rattle off some takes on this list. I think I think, one, Caleb Farley there, I think at 12 on this list. I think he could go up to. I really, really do like Caleb Farley's game. And right there at 13 as well, Jalen Waddle, another, a very good receiver class. He's another guy that could outperform that rank there. And one, I'll say, I think Nick Bolton might be a little high in the mid-20s. I need to see more from Bolton. I know he graded really well for PFF, but I think I want to see more from Nick Bolton this upcoming season, make more plays in the passing game, specifically on plays where he's reacting to things in front of him, not necessarily getting gifted some of these pick sixes he had at Missouri this past year. Kyle Trask threw him a birthday present in that Florida game that he dropped he could have had for a pick six. But I want to see more from Nick Bolton. And one more call out here. Love Chris Olave. And then there at 41, Asante Samuel Jr. is good. Asante Samuel Jr. is really good. I know he's a smaller player. I think he can climb up into the top 20 and maybe into the top 30, break into the first round with another successful season at Florida State. He's got the moving skills. I think he's got the demeanor to play in the secondary. I won't commit him at outside cornerback, but in the secondary at a high level in the NFL.
Yeah, the one guy you called out to me after reading this list, Olave, that I was just like, why am I not a little higher on Olave? Like I think there was just nothing that got me like super excited about his tape, but it was just all very just good. Like there was also nothing that I was like, damn, that needs to change. It is just all around solid wide receiver. So I do agree with you. Olave is very.
I got one more take on my last call, and then you can kind of rip it up if you'd like. Okay. I think Rashad Bateman's too high. At 20, I did not love Rashad Bateman at 20. I don't think here's the take. Here's the take. I don't think the differences between Tyler Johnson and Rashad Bateman are that crazy. I don't think they're that crazy. I don't understand. Like, he gets open very similarly, in my opinion. I don't know. I want to see more from Rashad Bateman.
That offense is not it's simplistic. Like, it's RPOs, verticals. He's not doing a ton.
He's not an elite athlete. Definitely not.
But I think he's more than good enough. He has good size too, at like 6'2", 205. So I don't know.
We'll see how it goes.
You're wrong
with Bateman. Any last calls from you, Mike?
No, the list is perfect as is, I thought.
Jesus Christ. All right, well, go check out the PFF. Go check out the PFF 50 on PFF.com. That's looking at the top 50 players in the 2021 NFL Draft. Also, make sure to download, subscribe, leave a review on the podcast. But until then, let's jump to the Seth Galina interview, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is none other than PFF's own Seth Galina. The second time you've been on the pod with us, Seth. Seth, how are things going? We need to open up with this. Third time. Yeah. We need to open up with this. Yeah. You recently posted on your Twitter account that the first dates aren't hitting. Give us some more detail. I need to know.
No. Can we read the exact tweet here? Which said,
okay,
probably not great for engagement, but your tweet was exactly, my first date conversion rate is awful. I've been on many first dates, on not many second dates this year. I'll disregard the typo, but that's just, I feel for you, Seth.
I want to include a typo. I think it's part of the experience. It's part of the fucking sadness.
The typo. Well, the thing is that I don't know if you guys tweet obviously a lot, and typos really, really get to you. I wasn't able to sleep last night because I knew I had a typo in a tweet yesterday. So look, it hasn't been going that great in 2020. Now, one of the things I do like in 2020 is these socially distanced park dates. I'm very into them because there's like a time limit on them. Because I'm very uninteresting, and your listeners probably already know that from listening to me on the podcast. But so after like an hour and a half, after 2 hours, both parties have to pee, and so it's just like a natural ending to the date. So I feel like that's a good thing for me because I run out of things to talk about 34 minutes into each date. I've timed this, of course. So after 34 minutes, I'm like, so do you like the weather, stuff like that. So it's not really going very well.
Dude, it sounds fucking brutal, man.
This is what it sounds like.
I'm ready to give up on this date right now.
Right, like this is what it sounds like to date Seth Galina, and clearly hasn't been going that well.
Well, let's get into some actual football stuff. I know you're doing a lot on the college football side, specifically working on something that you've teased a little bit on Twitter. I know others have as well. It's the PFF's first ever college football preview magazine. Talk about worst timing ever. I mean, fuck, we don't know what the college football season is going to like with COVID and how it's impacting the United States. However, if we had to just talk about it positively, talk about all the work that's gone into this and what you've done to boost this thing up.
I don't remember anything that I did for the college football preview because I watched so much football in such a short little time that every football play looks the same to me right now. Like, I can't tell the difference between anything anymore. But it was such a fun experience to just go and find stuff. You know, obviously we have such an unbelievable amount of data at our fingertips for college and NFL, and like just being able to find stuff that I think a lot of people, and not just me, PFF Tony, Anthony Tresh did an unbelievable job also finding stuff that I think other places don't have. I'm not saying other places aren't good publications. It's just we have stuff that they don't have that we can add to the dialogue, I think. So, I watched so much bad football over the past 2 months, just trying to find some positive spin on like Vanderbilt or some positive spin on Georgia Tech. It's rough. It's rough. Maybe that's why the dates have been so bad, because I've been such a bad headspace recently.
I also want to talk about
football on a date. That's probably not going to go well. I'll just say, like, that's unless they went to Vanderbilt. That's about the only time I'd want to talk about Vanderbilt football.
Well, yeah, a lot of Vanderbilt grads in Montreal, Quebec. So.
Yeah.
You have another piece coming out for PFF too about looking at situations for potential Heisman candidates and who has maybe the easiest situation to put up the numbers, put up the wins to come away with the Heisman Trophy, because that's what it's about. It's about wins and it's about yardage, touchdowns, all that stuff. So I feel like it's really important. I mean, Ohio State is a system that obviously comes out that is going to score a ton this upcoming year. But talk to me about what you've done with that piece and who has some of the easier situations next year.
Yeah, so this was super fun to put together. I looked at a bunch of different things.
Nice.
My great vocabulary here. That kind of, I thought, kind of give the offenses a bit of a floor, let's say. So I looked at like, okay, well, how many times do they run an RPO? And then compare that to how many times that another team would run like a quick game passing concept. So like the difference being reading one defender and then being able to either throw, let's say, a slant or just hand the ball off to the running back, compared to reading a defender and then having to throw 2 different routes or 3 different routes or something like that. So just kind of looking at those type of things, how many times they threw a screen pass, because obviously if you're throwing a screen pass to Travis Etienne and he goes and gets you 75 yards because he's good. Yeah. Like that goes in the stats, right? We know that. So that's going to look better on the stat sheet that Heisman voters look at. So I kind of looked at those type of things and ranked them. I looked at 14 quarterbacks. I didn't use Jamie Newman because we don't know much about what Todd Monken is going to bring. Is he going to bring kind of more of the Baker Mayfield stuff that he was working with in Cleveland, or more like the Jameis Winston, Ryan Fitzpatrick stuff that when he was calling plays in Tampa Bay? So I wasn't sure about that. Or like the stuff he was doing at like Oklahoma State. So I don't know. But anyways, taking out Newman, the guy who I found, and it kind of makes sense, was the new Oklahoma quarterback, Spencer Rattler, has the cushiest offense. And it makes sense because look what Lincoln Riley's done the past 3 years in terms of putting guys into getting guys into New York, right?
What's the flip side of the coin, though? Who among the top quarterbacks in college football is kind of like, they don't have a great situation, or they might not be in the most favorable to put up big numbers?
So it's kind of obvious now that I didn't know this was going to happen. It's kind of obvious now, and it's Miles Brennan at LSU. And now they're going to change the offense, so like take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But what it kind of shows what Burrow did last year was kind of incredible, because he had to throw over the middle of the field a lot. Now, obviously, they threw the ball a lot, and he threw the ball. Like, I also have another ranking of like goal to go situation. So like, is your offensive coordinator allowing you to throw the ball on the 3-yard line? That's going to put up healthy put up numbers, right?
Yeah.
But still, like, they threw a lot of quick game, not so much RPOs, not a lot of screens, not a lot of play action. It's just him just dropping back and throwing the football over the middle of the field and doing it at such an incredible level. And that's why he was the first pick in the draft and why he was our, I think he's like our highest wins above average quarterback of all time. So, I think it's more about how good Joe Burrow was in the offense last year rather than what they might do with Brennan coming up.
All right, let's move more to the draft here, where my top 8 quarterbacks are coming out on Wednesday. If you're listening this Wednesday, they're already on the website. I'm going to go through them here with you, Seth. Obviously, we've talked about this a little bit, but this was, how I felt about these guys. You haven't seen these rankings yet, so I'm going to go through these top 8. You're going to tell me where I got it wrong, what needs to be changed, and maybe who I missed in this top 8 for the 2021 draft. So number 1, Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, Justin Fields of Ohio State. Number 3, Trey Lance, North Dakota State. 4, Brock Purdy, Iowa State. 5, Jamie Newman, Georgia, formerly Wake Forest. Sam Ehlinger, Texas. 7, Kyle Trask, Florida. And then 8, Shane Buechele, SMU. What'd I miss? What'd I do wrong?
Well, there's a couple guys. No, I think those are like the top guys. Okay. For sure. That's not even a question. One of the interesting things was Brock Purdy is not even in the top 15. On one of the betting websites I went on, he's not even in the top 15 favorites to win the Heisman, which I thought was crazy because he's good. Like you said, he's really good.
And they put it all on him too. It's like
exactly. I'll give you where he ranked in my little thing here. Yeah, right in the middle. The Iowa State offense. So the guys that I think I can see really doing damage this year. I like the guys who, when I watched, felt like they could go through progressions, felt like they could sit in the pocket. I mean, that's my bias as a quarterback coach, but those are the guys I like. 2 guys are like, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but Kellen Mond and Jarrett Guarantano.
Yeah, Tennessee.
They there's a lot of inconsistencies there. I get it. But I when I look at them, I'm like, okay, there's something there where if they're able to kind of be insulated maybe by a better offense, and then, Mond at Texas A&M, they play in like that pro-style Jimbo Fisher type of offense where they're not doing all those stuff that on the flip side, like North Carolina does with Sam Howell. So I think that if you gave him a different type of offense, he would look better. Okay. Because I think in all the drop back stuff, he does look pretty good. Just obviously the inconsistency sometimes. So I think that he's a guy who I could see moving up a lot. Obviously, Texas A&M, a lot of people are talking about them to make a play in the SEC West, so we'll see. The other guy is just like I like Mac Jones. Like maybe it's just like the incredible amount of talent around him last year, which he still has. Yeah. But he gets through his progressions. He ties his feet well to the progressions and pretty accurate. Can move around a bit, so he adds that to his game. So I like him too.
I'll have to go back and watch Mond because I've watched of him from 18, and then I didn't watch probably as much in 19 because I saw a lot of the same guy, and I was like, I just wasn't a fan of his consistency. I do not like his release, the way he gets rid of that ball. You might be alone. Bad. It's just like I just don't think he's going to be. I don't know, but he is athletic and he makes some real nice throws, especially on the move. So we'll see.
Are there some big name quarterbacks that you hate right now that you just can't get on board with?
Well, okay, so I'll say that I don't. This is not necessarily just like draft eligible guys, but like one of the guys who I think is interesting is Sam Howell, because he's very good. I'm not really, and he's a true freshman, so it's like the season he had as a true freshman is fantastic. But again, I go back to what's the offense that he lives in, and with his offensive coordinator Phil Longo, he's like the RPO king of college football. So there's a lot of plays where it's like, well, I'm just going to take this one-on-one matchup, and he's again, like I'm not trying to take anything away from how good he is. He'll take the one-on-one matchup. He throws a freaking accurate ball. So like, I'm not trying to take anything away, but the offense gives him a floor that I think when I go on the flip side, I look at a guy like Keaton Slovis at USC where they're not doing a lot of that stuff. They're making him drop back, throw the football a lot, and he's making plays. So I think that the Sam Howell stuff he's a little teeny weeny, and I'm again afraid to say this out loud, but teeny weeny, little bit overrated. But I still think he's a good quarterback. So, and he was again true freshman. So like that's kind of the guy where I'm like, I want to see it another year, I guess, with Sam Howell.
All right, give us an elevator pitch on the top three guys, because I think these are the three names: Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance that would be talked about as top 5, top 10 picks in the 2021 NFL Draft. Give me the positives and negatives, kind of a quick pitch on all three of those guys.
I mean, the negative for Lance is going to be the same. I think like just the level of competition. But the
sample
positive,
size, though. I mean, yeah. I feel like he hasn't thrown the ball a ton either.
Well, that's the other thing. But I do feel like when he does throw it, like there's some like, quote unquote pro concepts in there, and he gets the job done. And it's not like he's just throwing like these fades. Like when I watch like Derek King, who I think is a good quarterback, when you watch him in the 2018 season at Houston, there's a lot of just like 7-man protection. Let me just throw a go ball. And with Lance, there's a lot more nuance, I think, to the offense there at North Dakota State. So I think that's the positive with Lance. With Fields, the negative is just the simplicity probably of the offense, like kind of the flip side of Trey Lance. I have him at the least amount of, in my little sample of quarterbacks here, I have him in the least amount of throws inside like the middle of the field. So all those throws are outside the numbers. They love that, like, okay, it's Ohio State, so defenses are going to play them with like off corners, and they're going to take a 10-yard hitch every time there. So I think that is the issue with Fields. The other issue, maybe he adds a little bit of a hitch, like he's got to like trim the fat a little bit off his like footwork. But the other side of the spectrum is that he's really good. Like he doesn't make mistakes, and I keep saying that, like, go find me 20 plays of the whole season where you're like, okay, yeah, I if I was playing quarterback, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have thrown the ball there on that, that shoulder or upfield or downfield, or he was covered in this place, so I wouldn't have thrown it there. Like you just don't find that very often with him, and I think that's the main thing with Fields. With Lawrence, the downside is. He's right now. Oh man, why am I saying this stuff out loud? I'm really setting myself up for my mentions to get roasted today. But, but like I feel like he hasn't shown so much ability to just go through progressions and be that NFL quarterback. And especially last year was him just staring down his first reads a lot, and he's so good that he's able to do it, but you'd like to see him work on that a bit more. And some of that is the Clemson offense is kind of, I would say simple. Yeah, I mean, it's simple, right?
It's honestly simple.
They've been running the same stuff for since Dabo got there, became the OC, became the head coach. So it's like, everyone knows what they're doing, but they kind of get away with it because their receivers are special. Now, obviously, he's losing his top 2 receivers from last year, so that'll change things. But I don't know. He's just like, he gets the job done because he's so good. But I'd like to see him more kind of go through progressions and deliver the ball accurately, even underneath. Not great when he has to come off those first reads. So I'd like to see him do more of that in 2020.
What do you think Lawrence's first date success rate is? I feel like that guy's probably had a decent amount of success.
Well, he got engaged and he's only 20.
I feel like is a red flag, though. Getting engaged that early when the world's at your fingertips, I don't know. She better be the soulmate, man. That's all I'm going to say. I think another thing I wanted to touch on as well is that if, we can close out with this, Seth. There's doubts around the NFL season. There's doubts around NCAA season. CFL is alive and well. If we had to pursue a CFL team, if the listeners had to pursue a CFL team, do we go all in on the Alouettes?
Vernon Adams, the starting quarterback for my Montreal Alouettes. They're going to do – so the CFL, I'm pretty sure, is going to do a bubble in Winnipeg, the great city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, home of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Nice stadium there. So if you want to – like, I've been to a couple CFL stadiums, Montreal, obviously, Toronto, Saskatchewan.
Wait, so how are they going to do a bubble, though, if with just one stadium there in Winnipeg?
I think they'll probably – well, how many teams? Do you know how many teams – first of all, how many cities do you think have over like 250 people in it?
No idea, dude. I have no idea.
There's 9 teams in the CFL. I hope I'm right with that. So Vancouver, the BC Lions. You have Edmonton, who are about to change their name because they have a racist name. Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Toronto, Ottawa, Hamilton, Montreal, and I feel like I missed one. But yeah, those are Calgary. So like I would say like pick a team based on colors. So if you like that dark, red and black, then you have either Ottawa or Calgary. Montreal, I don't think anyone's going to pick based on the colors. I'm not a big fan of their jersey.
I want to pick my team based on quarterback. Who's the best quarterback in the CFL?
You have Vernon Adams. You have Bo Levi Mitchell, who is like one of the best quarterbacks of all time in the CFL. And then after that, I don't know who's the quarterback.
That's
hold on. Jeremiah Masoli is the quarterback for Hamilton. Yeah, so there's I think like you go look at names that you recognize from college football, maybe some stints in NFL, and then you pick your team like that. Because at the end of the day, like there's only 9 teams. There's a lot of parity because there's a lot of reasons why there's no parity. Why there's a lot of parity in the CFL. One of them is just like you can't hold on to players that long because of the salaries. Teams can't afford to hold on to players that long. So I would say go pick based on either jerseys, either how nice their like city is. Or what the players you remember from watching college football.
So I just looked up Edmonton, and they are the Edmonton football team now. They are the Washington football. That is what they're known as.
What was
now.
Their name?
They were it's a racial slur. So we're not gonna
Oh, fair enough.
But it's a racial slur for Inuits. So
yeah, exactly.
Go look that one up.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Well, Seth, really appreciate you coming on the pod. I think I'm going to commit to Montreal. I'm going to commit to Vernon Adams and the Montreal Alouettes. I do love that city, too. I've been there 3 or 4 times. I am a huge fan. I'm going all in on
I've been here a couple times, too.
Our Alouettes. Well, Seth, really appreciate your time. We'll have to get you back on the pod soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.